Hey everybody, welcome back to the Let's Talk review show. It's been a couple weeks since we've done one of these, and this week we're going to be talking about 1990's Ghost, and its brand new Paramount Presents 4K Blu-ray, and we have our two-channel director reviews this week. We're going to be talking about 1998's Soldier and 2022's Incantation. And because it's a physical media channel first, let's start it off with that Ghost 4K Blu-ray review. But before we get into that 4K, let's talk a little bit about the film. Ghost was released in 1990. It's directed by Jerry Zucker, one half of the Zucker brothers, you know, the guys who gave us movies like Airplane, The Naked Gun, all of that kind of stuff. So this guy was mostly known for comedy coming into 1990, and who would have thought that guy would direct the highest grossing film of 1990, which stars Demi Moore, Whoopi Goldberg, and Patrick Swayze. A real three-headed monster in 1990. All three of these people are probably at the top of their game, especially Patrick Swayze. This is right in that really sweet spot of a Swayze run. You know, this is after Dirty Dancing, after Roadhouse, and only 1 year before he did Point Break. So this is really Patrick Swayze at the height of Patrick Swayze. But Whoopi Goldberg actually won the Academy Award for her performance as Oda Mae Brown in this movie. And this is a movie that I've always absolutely loved. That's why I picked up the 4K Blu-ray and why it's replacing my previously released Paramount Presents Blu-ray, because this is a movie I saw at a very young age. And correct me if I'm wrong, but if I believe the VHS itself was actually like a gray color, and I can remember coming home from kindergarten and my mom just started the movie and she just didn't care what I watched. So I watched the movie Ghost at 5 years old in kindergarten, not knowing anything about death and dying or even really having too much information on it. So because of that, I based my opinion on what happens to you when you die on the film Ghost. And you really shouldn't do that, because I don't think there's many facts in this movie, at least in my opinion. What's this movie about? Well, Demi Moore, Patrick Swayze, they're a couple at the beginning of this movie. They're moving into a new apartment together. They clearly have some money. Patrick Swayze's a banker. I'm not entirely sure what Demi Moore does, but they definitely have some money. They're renovating this apartment in New York City, this beautiful apartment with a great open floor plan. But of course, as time starts to go on, they're going to go out on a date one night. They saw a play. I think maybe it was an opera. I'm not entirely sure. Oh, it was the ballet. That's what it was. Patrick Swayze wasn't too interested in it. But they go. That night, Mr. Willie Lopez attacks them, and he decides he's going to take Patrick Swayze's wallet. A little bit of a struggle happens. We hear a gunshot go off. We see him taken off. We see Swayze behind him. Patrick Swayze walks back to Demi Moore, and that's where he sees that he's been shot. Demi Moore is holding his body. He's clearly dead. That's why there's a ghost there. And now he's got to accept that. He looks like he's going to go to heaven, but he steps out of the line and he's like, I got some unfinished business here. I got to figure out why I was killed and who did the killing. And that's actually where this movie starts to unravel a little bit more. He wants to communicate with Demi Moore, kind of warn her, because it turns out her friend in this movie, both of their friend actually, is the guy who set them up for those bank codes, because he got himself into a really big debt problem with some gangsters and they're here to kill him. So he set up his own friend like that, and he wants to warn his girl. He wants to warn Demi Moore. So what does he do? He finds somebody who's like a medium. Oda Mae Brown, played by Whoopi Goldberg, phenomenally in this movie. And she's going to be the one to communicate. Now, she's a fraud at this point. She doesn't realize that she can actually do this for real. Patrick Swayze is the first one to actually break through to her, and it's driving her nuts. And that's where even though this movie's kind of, it's dark, it's very sentimental. The score itself really does help drive that home, that it's a very heartwarming movie, but also a very sad movie. It got me again at the very end of this movie when they're saying their goodbyes to each other, Demi Moore and Patrick Swayze. Like, I know it's manipulating me, but it manipulates me so well that it does break me down. I never cared about the word ditto until I watched this movie. That's for damn sure.
I've always loved you.
Ditto.
And all three of them give great performances. Never was a big fan of Demi Moore's haircut in this movie, but hey, it is what it is. I always kind of associate Demi Moore with that haircut. A lot of people might go to like G.I. Jane where she shaves her head off, or think about her in Striptease, but I'll always think about her in Ghost. That's always my go-to for that. The movie itself, it's a very good movie. It's a very emotional movie. I can understand going to the movies in 1990 and seeing this with your girlfriend, or seeing it with your wife, because it's definitely a kind of movie that it's a love story at its heart of it. It's also got a little bit of a mystery in there. It's a little bit of a thriller. It's a very good movie. I could see why this was the highest grossing film of 1990. I definitely enjoyed it, and I can recommend it even if you don't pick up this 4K Blu-ray that we're going to talk about right now. And I have it right here because I have the Paramount Presents 4K Blu-ray, and it's going to be replacing my Paramount Presents Blu-ray that only came out a few years ago. And this is definitely one of the laziest releases that Paramount has ever put out. These are exactly the same releases, except for, one's got a 4K in it and one's got a Blu-ray. And if you go on the side, look at that. that. The 4K is in silver. They got a silver band on it, while the Blu-ray's got a black band. So no new artwork or anything. So it does the classic Paramount Presents stuff. The folder, it folds out like this. So everything that's in this 4K is in the Blu-ray except for that silver lining on the outside. So if you come inside, it is Paramount Presents. So you get the clear 4K Blu-ray case. You get a Blu-ray and a 4K Blu-ray. That previous release, the Blu-ray was just in blue. I actually appreciate them giving us some individual artwork here. So they actually went a little bit of an extra step. And all the extras that were on that Blu-ray release, so if you have that Blu-ray, they're all the exact same. It did at the time have a new interview with Jerry Zucker, which is really good. I definitely recommend checking that out. There is also a little making of documentary, nothing too crazy, nothing that's going to knock your socks off. I think it was like 16 minutes. There's also looking at the love scene, the most famous love scene probably, at least in the 1990s, I would say, with the clay. That was a very, very, very famous love scene. It got spoofed and satired all over the place. It might still be getting spoofed and satired, that love scene with the clay. And it made a lot of people want to take ceramics, that's for sure. So they break down that scene in here, and you get the trailers. The extras are nothing too special, but I do appreciate the extras that we have. Obviously, it's a little bit frustrating that they took the time to give us this Paramount Presents release and didn't give us any new extras on it. The only thing that you're going to be getting here is an upgrade to 4K Blu-ray. Don't expect a new audio track either, because you're going to have that same Dolby True HD 5.1, which is exactly what Paramount is becoming known for. They just keep reusing the same audio track over and over and over again. And very similar to what I said in Zodiac, part of the reason why they might be kind of just putting these 4K Blu-rays out with very little effort is because, they're merging with Skydance right now. I don't know how their physical media division is. For them, this just might be a quick way to make some money. I'm not entirely sure. That's kind of what I'm seeing from them. This does feel like a very lazy release from them, and that's for sure, because the only upgrade you're going to be getting now, because that Dolby True HD 5.1, which again, I can't say it's a bad Dolby True HD 5.1 because it's not. It's definitely a solid one. There are some bad Paramount ones out there, but this isn't one of the worst. It's just that, again, you've heard it before. You've heard it for years. It's nothing that's going to blow you away. It's fine. That's all it really is that it's fine. And, again, a movie like Ghost, the highest grossing film of 1990, won an Academy Award for Whoopi Goldberg, is beloved by a lot of people, deserves so much more. So that's very disappointing in that sense as well. So now what about those visuals? This can come in and save the day. The Dolby Vision and the HDR10 that are attached to this. Well, it's a very, very, very minor upgrade, that's for sure. Yes, the HDR and the Dolby Vision are doing a little bit of work. It definitely does brighten things up at points. It makes the skin look a little bit more natural. There isn't anything in here, though, that's going to pop off your screen. It's nothing that's going to stand out, especially if you have that previously released Blu-ray, because it's not a bad Blu-ray. That's the thing. It's not a Blu-ray, again, that's like one of the best Blu-rays I've ever seen, but it's fine. And if you were you had this fine Blu-ray out there with the Paramount Presents line, why did you just go out there and give us a slight 4K Blu-ray upgrade and only to the visuals? It just reeks of cash grab to me, and it's very, very, very disappointing. And, this is kind of what I expect from Paramount, but still, this is one of the laziest releases that I've seen. I can't give it a 0 or anything like that because the extras that are on here are pretty good. The Dolby True HD 5.1 is pretty good. The 4K Blu-ray itself, that upgrade visually, it's a little bit of an upgrade. I can't say it's not. I can't say it's not better than that Blu-ray, but for a movie like Ghost, I guarantee you if a boutique label had this one in their hands, they would have gave this the full treatment and it would have been a beautiful 4K Blu-ray upgrade. But unfortunately, it's Paramount and they really went the lazy route with this one. And I have to give this one an awful 5 out of 10 in my opinion. Definitely pick this one if you can get it for under $20 and you don't have that previous Paramount Presents Blu-ray. If you do have that Blu-ray, hold on to it. There is absolutely no reason to get this 4K Blu-ray. I might actually just give the 4K Blu-ray away and hang on to the Blu-ray. I'm not entirely sure. I'm definitely pretty disappointed with this release. And the next movie we're going to talk about is Mr. Smelly Potatoes director review this month. He wanted me to check out 1998's Soldier, which is directed by Paul W.S. Anderson and is written by David Webb Peoples. And why do I bring up the writer? Well, that's the same guy who co-wrote Blade Runner. He wrote 12 Monkeys, and he also wrote Unforgiven. So he's definitely quite the writer, and you team up with Paul W.S. Anderson, who has a certain style to him. He's not a very good director, in my opinion. A lot of people like him. A lot of people like the Resident Evil franchise and what he did with that. I've always kind of felt like he's kind of just like a step down, kind of like a director for hire. You never really look at him for his like distinct style. He kind of can come in, do the work. He's fine. And that's all I've ever thought of Paul W.S. Anderson. But the writer definitely intrigued me, and so did the star of this movie. It stars Kurt Russell. I definitely don't remember this movie coming out in 1998. Not at all. So this movie just kind of came and went, and makes a lot of sense. It was a box office bomb. It had a $60 million budget and only got a return of $14.6 million. Now, I don't remember the marketing or anything for this, and I was a kid at the time, and I can very much remember, like, when movies were coming out. Like, Men in Black came out the year before. I can remember the entire marketing campaign. I remember seeing in the movies, and I can remember coming to VHS, that lenticular lens cover that it had. This one, I don't know what the hell happened. I'm not entirely sure. You have a star in Kurt Russell, who was still beloved at the time. I think this came out the same year as Breakdown, so maybe Breakdown just overshadowed it. And you kind of got Kurt Russell playing a very similar role as, like, Snake Plissken or in The Thing, where he's a very quiet, reserved man. In fact, he's a guy who was raised to be a soldier. From the time at birth, they were going to make this guy a super soldier. That's all he was going to know how to do. He was definitely not going to be an emotional person. Don't expect him to be socializing with you, because that's not what he's here to do. He's a killing machine, and that's how the movie opens. We get to see him from the time he's born, and the other people who are just like him, all the way through doing their missions. And what does this movie become about? Well, him and his team end up having to face off against people who they believe are better than them. His unit's led by Gary Busey, just giving another classic Gary Busey performance in this movie, who has two great lines in this movie. At the very early part of the movie, he's like, "My father had an old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it." I'm thinking, that's not your father's old saying. That's just an old saying. Everyone says that. And then later in the movie, he goes through a whole nother thing. Like, my father used to have a saying, and it was like the most thing. It's something I've never heard of. I think that's kind of what they were trying to do, was the juxtaposition between the two sayings. And it's funny because the guy who in this movie plays the antagonist, a real piece of shit, the leader of that other team of super soldiers. He's like, "I don't understand what you're trying to say." And I'm thinking the same thing. I'm like, yeah, this guy's a dick, but he's right. What the hell is Gary Busey talking about? Basically, they bring in these super soldiers. They show them competing with each other. The one guy starts 20 minutes after Kurt Russell and still was able to pass him in a race. I love the set design for this movie. It looks very 1998 sci-fi, and I always did like that look. The CGI in the movie, not the greatest, I gotta be honest. Again, something very much of the time. I'm sure they weren't expecting people in 2024 to be watching this going, wow, that looks like absolute shit. But the actual set design, the practical effects, I actually did really enjoy it. Even if it did kind of feel like this movie was taking place all on sets, it felt like it should have been bigger than it was, especially when Kurt Russell ends up having to, like, he gets stuck on, I think, a garbage planet. He's got to learn to socialize a little bit. All this stuff does kind of feel very rushed in the movie. It's a very short movie, and it's really telling a very thought-provoking story about, that's why you kind of bring in the guy from Blade Runner, the guy who wrote that. It's a very thought-provoking movie. Like, what does it mean to be human? Like, these guys are essentially machines. They're nothing more than that. They have no emotion. They have no emotions. They are the strongest people around, and you basically milk them to be fighters for you. And, there was definitely a deeper message in there about trying to make these people more human as the time goes on. And obviously, good will triumph evil. That's what they're trying to tell you. I just feel like that could have been expanded a little bit more. If this movie came out today with a better director, I feel like this would be like a 2.5-hour movie, and it would have definitely been a much, much, much better film, in my opinion. This is definitely a good watch. I enjoyed my time with it. I'm not going to tell you how everything unfolds in this film, but I definitely think you'll enjoy it. It definitely gave me nostalgic feelings while watching, especially for 1998, because we used to get movies like this all the time, and some are good, some are bad. It's not a movie that's going to stick with you after a couple days, but I did really enjoy it. I definitely think that there's a better movie in there, but I still had a good time with it. I appreciate Mr. Smelly Potato recommending this movie to me, and I would give it an alright 7.5. It's definitely worth your time. I'm not too sure about this movie's physical releases. I could definitely see a boutique label putting out a 4K Blu-ray for this because, again, it's a pretty nice looking movie. You could see where the $60 million went. It's just, I feel like it probably got lost in the shuffle or was mismarketed because I have no recollection of this movie at all. And the next movie and last movie we're going to be talking about is Incantation. And this one is directed by Kevin Ko. And this is actually the highest grossing Taiwanese horror film of all time. And you're able to check this out right now on Netflix. And before we go any further, there is actually a dub for this. And you can also watch it with subtitles with the regular language on it. I'd recommend doing that. The dub is not the greatest. I do appreciate Netflix always giving us dubs because there are people out there, they probably won't check out the movie at all if there isn't a dub. They don't really like subtitles, which I understand. I have a bit of a vision problem, so if I do have to watch something with subtitles, I got to watch it like on a smaller TV because I'm going to sit close to it. So I do understand, why people wouldn't like subtitles, but a bad dub can take you out of a movie, so I would recommend going the subtitle route. And, you know, what is this movie about? Well, I'm going to say right out of the gate, Frank cursed me. He definitely went out of his way to curse me. I'm not going to give you guys any more context than that, just to say that Frank cursed me by making me watch this movie. And it is a great found footage horror movie. We talked about our favorite found footage movies actually on Frank's channel, I think it was like 2 weeks ago on his live show. And I didn't have this in my top 5 because I hadn't seen it yet, so this was a first-time watch for me. This would make my top 5. I thought this was a fantastic found footage horror film. It reminded me a lot of The Empty Man. And what's this movie about? Well, it's kind of told non-linearly. So we open up, we see that a mother is about to reunite with her daughter. She's explaining to us that, you know, her daughter's cursed, like a curse was put on them about 6 years earlier. And we start to flash back to what actually happened 6 years ago. We see that I believe it's her boyfriend and her boyfriend's cousin. They're making a YouTube video. Essentially, that's what they do. They go around, they go to these places and they investigate. And, you know, they're trying to spark interest. So, of course, they're not really being too nice with everything at this place that they're at, this, like, religious camp. They all worship, I believe it's called the Mother Buddha at this place. And, you know, again, they're not taking it seriously. There's this tunnel that they sacrifice stuff to. Again, I don't want to go too far into this one because I want you guys to go into this one as blind as possible because this one really did surprise the hell out of me. Some of the imagery in this movie is definitely going to stick with you, especially in a found footage horror film. There's a scene in the middle of this movie that it'll leave you panicking. You're like worried if people are going to escape or not. And then they start like showing you stuff that's happening around them. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Just stuff that will actually get under your skin. And then the very end of the movie too, I'm telling you, it's going to leave you thinking. That's for damn sure. And it's a movie that asks you to play along with. The movie's original title is actually the symbol that you see on the poster. That's the original title of the movie. A lot like Prince, we're using a symbol as the title. So very interesting stuff. Very well made movie. I really, really, really enjoyed this one. Frank wanted me to watch an Asian horror movie and a found footage horror movie at that. Two things that Frank absolutely loves. And Frank's never really let me down with his recommendations. This is a really good one. Like I said, you guys can check this one out on Netflix right now. I don't want to really say too much about this one other than just, hey, if you haven't seen it yet, it's definitely worth it. Just check it out with those subtitles. And I would give this one a pretty solid 8.5 out of 10. Definitely worth your time and money. And thank you guys all for checking out this video. I hope you really enjoyed it. And if you did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And of course, we do have those channel memberships. So if you want to become a friend of the channel, a producer for the channel, like John Doe Juggalo and Jet Eckert, you could do that. Or you could become a channel director and have your own review each and every single month, like Mr. Smelly Potato and Frank from Frank's Media and Reviews. But if you got no money to throw away, guys, don't worry about it at all. We just hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, get out in those streets, tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.